Isabel gets her first real assignment at Spenstone Group. Everything seems routine until one column of numbers quietly refuses to make sense. What's the difference between look into something and look at something? Why do English speakers say something doesn't add up when they're not even talking about math? And what happens to the word doesn't when people speak quickly? By her second day, Isabel already had a desk that felt like her own. A half empty coffee cup, a notebook covered in arrows and underlined words, and a small sticky note from James that simply said, "Black, no sugar," with a smiley face drawn next to it. James leaned over from his desk. "Ready for your first real assignment?" "Please tell me it's exciting," Isabel said. "It's quarterly reconciliation," James said. "So, no. But everyone has to start somewhere." He sent her a file. "Basically, you're checking that the numbers in this report match the numbers in the system. Sounds boring, but it's actually how you learn the whole business. Every transaction tells a story." Isabel opened the file and got to work, comparing rows, checking totals, the rhythm of it almost calming. An hour passed, then two. Around mid morning, Derek Walsh walked past, loud as always, talking on his phone about a client dinner that apparently had to be absolutely perfect. He winked at Isabel without slowing down. "That's Derek," James said quietly. "Senior VP. He talks a lot, mostly about himself." Isabel smiled and went back to her screen, and that's when she noticed it. One column, a transfer marked under a client code she didn't recognize, didn't quite match the number in the main system. It wasn't a huge difference, a few $1,000s. Easy to miss if you weren't looking closely, but it was there. She checked it again. Same result. "Hey, James," she said, turning her screen slightly toward him. "Does this look right to you?" James glanced over, scrolling briefly. "Looks fine to me." Sometimes there's a small lag between systems updating. Don't worry about it. It happens all the time with new accounts. "Right," Isabel said slowly. "Makes sense." But something about it didn't sit right with her. She told herself it was probably nothing. She was new. She didn't fully understand the system yet, and everyone kept telling her these small differences were normal. Still, she copied the client code into her notebook before closing the file, just in case. At lunch, Isabel met Lynn again at the Halcyon Grill, this time joined by Lynn's co-worker, a sharp, elegant woman named Camille Durand. "Camille runs creative over at Cloudiesphere," Lynn explained. "She terrifies everyone, including me." "Only the people who deserve it," Camille said smoothly, not even looking up from her salad. "How's the job going?" Lynn asked Isabel. "Surviving day two?" "So far," Isabel said. "Although I found something a little strange in one of my reports today. Probably nothing." "Welcome to finance," Camille said. "Half of it is numbers. The other half is convincing yourself the numbers are fine." Isabel laughed, though part of her didn't fully relax. Later, walking back toward Halcyon Tower, Lean asked, almost casually, "Hey, did Cloudiesphere ever come up at your office? We lost a contract with Spenstone a while back. Nobody really explained why. One day we had the account, the next day, gone." "I haven't heard anything about that," Isabel said. "Should I have?" Lynn shrugged. "Probably not. Just curious. It was a weird situation anyway. Forget I mentioned it." Isabel nodded, but the comment stayed in her mind the rest of the afternoon. Sitting quietly next to the strange number she still hadn't quite explained. Hi everyone, welcome back to the district. Let's dive straight into chapter 2. The numbers don't lie. Because there's a lot to unpack here, even in a quiet, ordinary office day. Let's start with something James said early on. You're checking that the numbers in this report match the numbers in the system. Here, match is being used as a verb meaning to be the same as or to correspond exactly with something else. We often use it in workplace English when comparing two things that should be identical. Does this invoice match the receipt? Your story doesn't match what he told me. It's a really useful simple verb for comparison. Now listen to this. Something about it didn't sit right with her. This is a wonderful idiom, to not sit right with someone, and it means that something feels wrong or uncomfortable, even if you can't fully explain why. It's a feeling in your gut, not necessarily based on hard evidence. You might say, his explanation didn't sit right with me, or something about the deal just doesn't sit right. It's incredibly useful for describing intuition or suspicion in a natural way. Let's look at James again when he reassures Isabel. Don't worry about it. It happens all the time with new accounts. Grammar wise, notice the structure here. It happens all the time. This is present simple used for routine, repeated occurrences, not just facts that are always true, but things that occur regularly and predictably. We use this structure constantly to reassure someone that something is normal. Like, don't worry, it happens to everyone. Or, that happens all the time around here. Now, pronunciation time. Let's listen again to that same sentence. Don't worry about it. In natural spoken English, don't worry often gets compressed. The t in don't softens or almost disappears before a consonant sound. So it can sound more like don't worry rather than a sharp don't. And about it often blends into something close to about it, with the final t of about connecting smoothly to it. This linking between words is incredibly common in fast natural English, and it's one of the biggest reasons learners sometimes feel like native speakers are speaking too quickly. Really? They're just connecting sounds the way fluent speech naturally does. Let's move to Camille's line at lunch. Half of it is numbers, the other half is convincing yourself the numbers are fine. This isn't slang or idiom exactly, but it's a lovely structure worth noticing grammatically. Convincing yourself uses a reflexive pronoun, meaning the action goes back to the subject. You convince yourself of something. You remind yourself to do something. You tell yourself a story. Reflexive structures like these are incredibly common when describing internal thoughts and self talk in English. And finally, let's look closely at something that's easy to miss. When Isabel double checks the numbers, the story says she looked into it again. To look into something means to investigate or examine it carefully, not just glance at it. Compare that to look at, which simply means to view something. I looked at the report is neutral. You just viewed it. I looked into the report suggests you investigated it more deeply, looking for something specific. This distinction matters a lot in professional English, especially in workplace contexts where you're describing levels of attention and seriousness. That's our lesson for chapter 2. We covered the verb match for comparison, the idiom didn't sit right with her, present simple for routine reassurance, natural sound linking in fast speech with don't worry about it, reflexive structures like convincing yourself, and the important difference between look at and look into. So, Isabel has her first quiet doubt, a small number that doesn't quite add up, and a strange comment from Lynn about a contract that disappeared without explanation. Nothing dramatic yet, just two small details sitting side by side in her notebook. In our next chapter, Isabel and Lynn step outside the office for a bit and we'll learn a little more about life in New York. But don't worry, the numbers haven't forgotten about her yet. I'll see you there.